Hello everyone, more DC Essential Wrestlers here, and today I'm going to give you guys how to fix Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Now, as we all know, or for people who don't know, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was part of the Marvel vs. Capcom franchise, and it's considered by many to be one of the worst video games in 2017, and definitely the worst Marvel vs. Capcom game. And I'm going to start by asking, I believe that there was a chance the game could have been great. I already made how to build a roster for Marvel vs. Capcom 4, which is essentially me going through all the different possibilities as to what my Marvel vs. Capcom 4 roster would be. However, I decided to go through Infinite because I believe Infinite is a more interesting game. More often, more people build like Marvel vs. Capcom 4, build the roster, not fixing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So that's what I'm here to do. I've looked at the roster many times, and I can't believe how terrible it is. I'm almost confident Capcom look at the Marvel roster and was like, yeah, we're just going to use the same ones from 3 and Ultimate, because to be honest, we're not making a good enough roster for Marvel, then we're not making it good enough for Capcom. And to be honest, if you look at behind the scenes for 3, Ultimate, and Infinite, yeah, I can kind of agree why Capcom just gave up. And I'm pretty sure nowadays they don't want anything to do with Marvel. I mean, sure, there's still some Marvel references, so that's why I still don't believe we're going to get a Marvel vs. Capcom 4. Because it's like if you're working for a toxic company and he does all this, like, would you really work with them again? Like, after one project fails, like, no, you're not working with them again. But yeah. So that's why, yeah. However, I decided, let's fix Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's roster. Yeah. Now, I want to also address the number one thing that the game failed, and that is there is going to be no X-Men or no Fantastic Four, so no Fox property character. However, because of that, it definitely put on the more limitations for the MCU characters. That's why the only 2 major players that will be returning from Marvel, like through the entire franchise, not from one game, are just going to be Spider-Man and Captain America. Here's why. When you really think about it, the X-Men are a very important part of the Marvel Universe. Because of that, do you really think that taking them out of the game... But by the way, they're the main starters of this franchise. So it's like, take the MCU character, takes the X-Men out of the game. Do you really think do you guys really believe I have to include characters like Hulk, Iron Man? Not really. Now, it may seem like we're off to a poor start, but don't worry, we're actually off to a decent start. Because another returning character is from 3. And the character will be Super Skrull from Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate. The reason why I decided is because the Skrulls were in the Captain Marvel movie. So that's why I decided, yeah, we can use Super Skrull. And no, it's not for the Fantastic Four, like, representation. It's more from, like, the Captain Marvel representation. Plus, I know a lot of people like Dormammu in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but I think some people only preferred him because he was actually a pretty obscured character. I think when he returned in Infinite, it's kind of disappointing. I think the same thing was with Spencer as well. But yeah. So we have 3 returning characters from the entire franchise from the Marvel side. Now on the Capcom side, this is one where I didn't have nearly as much trouble, because with Marvel I could think of some interesting picks. Yeah. So for the returning Capcom characters, we have Beautiful Joe, Zero, Wesker, Ryu, Chun-Li, Akuma, Morgan, Felicia, Crimson Viper, Dante, Trish, Strider, and Captain Commando. Those are like the only returning characters from the entire franchise, or the other games for the entire franchise. Like, I believe unlike Marvel, Capcom is a lot harder because you gotta pick some of the bigger ones of the franchise, which is why I believe they included characters like Morgan and Strider. Yeah. With Marvel, it's kind of harder because you're taking one of the more important elements, but yeah. Now, I decided to also address one major thing. The one major thing I will add is this. That this is going to be a more horror-based. More horror and more supernatural. To fit in with the whole Infinite. That's why there's a lot more Darkstalkers in this game. Right now there's 5. And there's going to be for a reason. It's more based on the horror monsters from both franchises. But yeah. So we're going to start off with Marvel. Starting off, we have the most obvious pick, Ultron. I feel like Ultron was so obvious for Infinite because obviously in the story mode we merged Ultron and Sigma, and that leads to our first Capcom villain, Sigma. So Ultron and Sigma are pretty much no-goers. They're both basically coming back to the game and all that. Next up, we have Captain Universe. This one is an obscure pick, but that's probably why I picked him. I picked Captain Universe for a few reasons. One, most of the time, I thought of the characters that never graced the franchise, and you're gonna see that throughout the Marvel side, almost all of these characters are brand new. Nobody ever picked them or even thought of picking them. Maybe a few, but yeah. So that's why with Infinite, I decided let's go with the more crazy and out of place picks. So that's why, I decided to bring back Captain Universe. Plus, he can bring about the cosmic plays. And I'm first just going to go through Marvel, and then go through Capcom. The next 4 are the Wrecking Crew from Marvel. And now these guys are more enemies of almost everybody, but their primary opponent is Thor. And that's why these guys can actually replace Thor as a character. You see, these 4 characters are all replaced by Asgardian magic. So it's like, if you miss Thor's lightning, these guys can kind of do the same. Now, granted, they don't just summon the weather and control the weather and all that. But these guys have control over thunder. And are pretty much heavy brutes. So, So that's why these 4 characters coming to this franchise actually works. And I also look at some of the criticism for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's roster, and as some of the roster's complaints were the lack of villains, lack of female characters, and that's why I decided let's fix those issues. So that's why the Wrecking Crew is up next. Is here. They fit the heavy brute characters, but at the same time they also fit the more street level characters. Yeah. Next up, Captain Marvel. This one was kind of obvious she was coming to the franchise. And that's why I said, she's still coming to this franchise either way. Yeah. Next one, Moon Knight. Moon Knight is actually kind of shocking he didn't even appear in Infinite. I get nowadays he would. If, say, Marvel vs. Capcom 4 was released now, Infinite was released now, they would have instantly included Moon Knight. But yeah. I should also say that he can kind of replace Taskmaster from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. You know how he has, and plus the similar weapons. But yeah, he'd pretty much be like a Batman-esque character, essentially, which is kind of ironic. And yeah. Next up, Black Bolt. I was generally shocked he didn't show up in Infinite. Generally shocked. I get you don't always have to include the more obscure, but it's Infinite was developed and released around the time the Inhumans TV show came out, the infamous Inhumans TV show, which of course, as we all know, failed drastically. However, it's kind of sad that they didn't include any of them. That's why I decided I'm bringing Black Bolt in for a reason. Plus, he's an MCU character, so it's like, it's an MCU character, but it's like, it's not necessarily one that you would not necessarily have a problem with. Like, I think one of the reasons why Marvel's Capcom Infinite's roster failed is because it's like, if you're in the MCU, you're in. If you're not in the MCU, you're out. It's like, some of these characters were literally in the MCU around the time Infinite came out, and they didn't even get a shot. So that's why I thought, let's fix that problem. Next up, Star-Lord. I find it weird how Gamora and Rocket Raccoon got into these games, but not Star-Lord. I mean, I get that, but it's like, I get that maybe Rocket Raccoon was more popular, but it's like, Star-Lord's still the leader, so I thought they need some representation at least. But yeah. Now, the next two characters are Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Now, these two characters, I was like, how can you not include these two? Because here's the thing. They're both MCU characters, but they have ties with the X-Men's Magneto. So that's why these two should have been in Infinite to make the game roster more interesting and more diverse. But they didn't. It's like, now granted, I can see, like, I'm not going to go into like the moveset. I'm just saying the why I picked the character instead. It's like, for me, having these two characters should have been like instant, like, yes, we should include these two characters. They're MCU characters, but they also have ties with X-Men. They work perfect for the franchise. Yeah. They work perfect for this franchise because, like, you can in a way have some X-Men in there. But at the same time, it's not. Yeah. Next up, Daredevil. Again, like Black Bolt, it's kind of sad that these guys did not raise this franchise. Like Daredevil did not reach Marvel's Capcom Infinite despite being in the ending of Chris Redfield's ending in Marvel's Capcom 3, and also Ultimate, and also appearing as Shadowland Daredevil in the Shadowland stage for Ultimate. Yeah. It's like, yeah. Next up, Elektra. She was actually originally meant to be in Marvel's Capcom 3. This is why she had the hand stage, but I believe they had some problems with that, or they either weren't just not that interested. However, I think Elektra can also fit in one category, and that is female characters more. So that's why I thought, let's bring Elektra into this franchise. Plus, she can provide some really quick like gameplay as well. But yeah. The Punisher. Again, just like the other three Netflix characters, or TV show characters, like Black Bolt, Daredevil, and Elektra, it's kind of shocking that both Punisher and the next person up, Jigsaw, weren't. Like, I believe most people can know what kind of character it would be, but yeah. And also, believe it or not, Punisher actually, in a way, started the franchise. There's actually a Capcom game known as The Punisher. So that's why I thought Punisher should have had at least a stay in the game franchise, at the very least. That's why I also picked Jigsaw, because I thought I decided let's pick another villain. I thought Jigsaw works perfect for this game, for this franchise, because based on the horror elements, and Capcom is probably best known for some horror like Resident Evil. Yes, Capcom did make Resident Evil. Shocking. Yes. Capcom also made Darkstalkers, which is meant to be a gothic horror-like universe, but yeah. Next up, we have Werewolf by Night. Decided Moon Knight also needs some villains, and I thought, yeah, Werewolf by Night, even though he's more like a secondary foe, I believe he's probably his most well-known foe. But yeah. I say, yeah, I think he works perfect for this franchise. Radioactive Man. Now, this guy is actually an interesting pick. He's essentially more like an everybody foe. He's a Hulk villain. He's a Thor villain, Iron Man villain. He's pretty much an everybody foe. And that's why I thought, yeah, he works perfect for this franchise. And, like, he pretty much would be like a character that would constantly drain your health. But at the same time, yeah. Yeah, I think Radioactive Man is perfect for this franchise. He's actually never been in. I believe even back in the early years, or like around the early 2000s and mid 2000s, like before 2010. I believe he was like during that time was like one of Marvel's most popular foes. Before nowadays, you don't hear about him. Yeah, because I remember hearing about or learning, seeing his design like pretty early on. But yeah, so I decided, yeah, he deserves to be in this franchise. But yeah. Fine, next up we have the Sentry. Now, the Sentry is kind of an interesting character. He's kind of grown, actually, in recent years. But I think around this time, he still is not that well known. That's why I decided, yeah. Now, Sentry would probably be a replacement for Phoenix, and here's why. Much like Phoenix, who has one side who's good, the other side is bad. And that's why I decided with Sentry, he would probably work exactly the same, except with one difference. He has the Void instead. And so, like, if you beat Sentry in the same amount, like, it would pretty much play like Phoenix, except with just obviously different movesets. So, yeah. Obviously, I'm not saying just replace the character. It's just saying you can see some DNA in some characters. And that's why I decided to do. Sentry can pretty much turn into like the Void if he's defeated, and he's like maximum power, and pretty much says you're screwed at that point. Yeah. Now, would I change his health? Only for the Void. Only for Void, because let's be honest, I believe that's why Capcom decided to make Phoenix the lowest health character, because let's be honest, if she did that crazy amount of damage and hers was like normal, like say Captain America or Iron Man, do you really think that would be fair? No, that would be so broken. But yeah. Next up, Titania. She is a villain of Thor and even She-Hulk, so I thought, yeah. And she essentially is a heavy brute character, so yeah. She pretty much be a replacement for She-Hulk, which is kind of ironic, but yeah. And in doing so, we're bringing her husband, Absorbing Man, Carl Creel. He's a villain of the Hulk and Thor, and I decided he would be a perfect replacement for the Hulk. Because essentially he has the ability of shape-shifting and absorbing stuff, or mainly absorbing stuff, so yeah. Like, just imagine, like, him absorbing something that's hard. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why I think, yeah, he should be in this franchise. But he's also one of Marvel's more obscure characters. But yeah. Next up, Scarecrow. This one was an interesting pick because, like Radioactive Man and the Wrecking Crew, he's more of an everybody foe. Like, he's a Ghost Rider foe, he's a Spider-Man foe, a Captain America foe. I would say he's Spider-Man foe a lot less. He's more of a Captain America and Ghost Rider enemy or villain. So that's why I thought, yeah, he works perfect for this franchise. And also, I should also address that I decided to pick him because of the fact he's a more horror-based character, so I thought he works perfectly well. And finally, our final Marvel pick is Man-Thing. And there's a few reasons why. He was actually referenced or had shown in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 when Jill's ending. Yeah. And also, he would be a perfect, like, elemental character, like Thor. Even though, unlike, say, Thor, he isn't really connected to any elemental, but yeah, he's more of a plant-like character, so that's why I thought, yeah, I think Man-Thing works well. And also, he's a brute as well, so again, he can also replace characters who couldn't come, like Hulk. Now, that was the Marvel Universe. Other characters who could have made it could have been like Thor, but at the same time, it's like, that's the problem. If I added Thor, like, I hope you guys can see, is like, if I added Thor to this list. Like if I replace Thor with, if I say replace, say Jigsaw with Thor, would you guys say that this roster is good? No, you guys will not. I would even say it's not good because, let's be honest, who are the two characters, the two Marvel heroes that you think of that's not Iron Man, Hulk, or X-Men? I would think of Spider-Man, Captain America. I also think that those two characters are the two most popular Marvel characters. And yeah. I would argue that they're so popular, like, yeah. Like with Spider-Man, you should already know him by now. Same with Captain America. That's why I say these two characters, out of these two, these are like the two characters that I think of when I think of Marvel that's not Wolverine or Hulk. That's why, yeah. So that's the Marvel roster here. So we have Ultron, Captain Universe, Wrecker, Bulldozer, Power Driver, and Thunderball. Yeah, those are the Wrecking Crew's members. Wrecker, Power Driver, Bulldozer, and Thunderball. Captain America, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Moon Knight, Black Bolt, Star-Lord, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Daredevil, Elektra, Punisher, Jigsaw, Super Skrull, Werewolf by Night, Radioactive Man, The Sentry, Titania, Absorbman, Scarecrow, and Man-Thing. Now, onto the Capcom roster. I should also address Capcom's roster is definitely a lot lacking in some obscure picks. I really couldn't think of any characters that could have come that raced to my mind, so that's why I thought, yeah. So I should also address with the Devil May Cry characters. I'm for sorry, Devil May Cry fans. Like, I couldn't think of like any other character that could have been interesting. I only had to choose Dante and Trish because I know with my other one I picked Mundus, who's like one of the main villains, and Lady coming to the franchise, but yeah. The reason why I couldn't pick any more is because I really couldn't think of which character actually sounds cool into the store mode. And so I thought it just has to be the two returning characters from the previous game. That's not Virgil. Resident Evil definitely lacks some characters. I chose to do more of a human antagonist. I think that's what Resident Evil is more known for other than being a horror franchise. I think more people are familiar with the more human antagonist. Yeah. Other characters that could not return. Yeah. Spencer wasn't coming. I wanted to include more other characters, so it's like, I gotta pick some more obscure. Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, he probably was never even coming to this game either way, and I don't know why they had to pick him. But then again, look at the Marvel roster, so it's like, that pretty much answers your question, yeah. I don't get why Nemesis came back for Infinite. He just doesn't even make sense in the story. But yeah. Now, you could also notice I did not include Thanos in the Marvel roster, and that's because this is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. This came around the MCU's biggest, most popular, like the MCU when it was at its heat, at its popularity. And I decided Thanos was never coming to this, would never come back. Here's why. It's too MCU-fied. It's too MCU. If I replace Sentry with Thanos, the Marvel roster would suck in general. Let's be honest. I know most people don't want to admit it, but it's true. If I replace, say, like Daredevil or maybe even Werewolf by Night with Thanos, one of those two characters, the Marvel roster would literally be trash. Because you gotta remember, we're not doing two MCU fight. Like, look, the MCU characters I have are Captain America, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Black Bolt, Star-Lord, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Daredevil, Elektra, Punisher, Jigsaw. Like, around that. Like, literally not even close. And also Ultron, but he really can't even count. You see, it's only a small small variety of MCU characters, and it's mainly from the Netflix shows and the TV shows in general. Because I thought, yeah. But yeah, let's get into the guy on roster. So starting off, we already said Sigma. Next coming character is X from the Mega Man franchise and Zero's best friend. X was always coming to the franchise if they're gonna add Sigma to it, so that's why it makes sense. But yeah, I can understand why X was coming back. Next up, Edward Falcon from Power Stone. This is where our Thanos replacement is going to be. Because instead of having Thanos having the Infinity Stones, which I believe was a terrible storyline, and it clearly shows that it's too MCU-fied. Too MCU and kind of lacked a lot of the fun that they could have had. That's why I prefer to add the Capcom Power Stone franchise into this. And this is actually one of the first new characters coming into the franchise. Many people actually prefer this roster, would probably prefer him instead of Thanos. And to be honest, I think I would rather have that as well. I feel like the problem when you add Thanos is it becomes too MCU-fied. Like with Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you already had a crazy amount of diversity. You had Doctor Doom, you had Venom, Shumagorov, Juggernaut, Blackheart. You can add Thanos into that roster. You can add him. Nobody is going to complain. This roster in Infinite, you kind of shouldn't even do that. Plus, it's to get other, more it's 50-50. But yeah. That's why for the storyline, you'll be using Ultron Sigma. You'll be using Edward Falcon's Power Stones and the gems in that universe. And he essentially gets them in the Infinity Gauntlet instead, and essentially does the merging of the Marvel and Capcom universes. Similar to how in a storyline between Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where Doctor Doom, Albert Wesker, and Dormammu somehow were able to merge the Marvel and Capcom universes into one. But yeah. Next up, Claire Redfield. Now, this is actually shocking that I chose Claire and not Leon, and here's why. Marvel's Capcom Infinite roster lacked a lot of female characters, and I decided, what would happen which Resident Evil character should I include? And I picked either Claire Redfield or Leon Kennedy. However, I decided with Marvel vs. Capcom 3, a lot of people like the Super Skrull because while it was Fantastic Four representation, having him is actually a lot more fun because it's a lot more unique and diverse compared to, say, it was the Human Torch. And so I decided I had to pick Claire Redfield because she would probably add something unique to this franchise than probably Leon could. So that's why it shows. Plus, Claire also makes a little bit more sense in this roster. But yeah, maybe that's just me, but yeah. Next up, Ada Wong. Again, the Resident Evil franchise may be a little lacking, but that's probably because there's only 3 coming characters, and that would be Wesker, Claire, and Ada, and that's why I decided Ada should come to the franchise. She can provide more of the anti-heroine characters. You see this in these games. You have Tron and Marvel's Capcom 2 and 3. I'd say Tron is more antagonistic, but she's still neutral. So that's Ada Wong could come. And no, I don't consider Crimson Viper to be neutral. I think she's more neutral to good. That's why Ada could definitely provide a more split down the middle. Next character coming up is Pyron from the Darkstalkers franchise. Pyron is such an interesting character. I'm actually shocked they didn't use him. And it actually made me wonder, I should have included Vega from Street Fighter. But I decided, it works like this. This roster still works fine. So I think I should have done more with the Capcom roster, but yeah. Pyron could actually be a replacement for Galactus. And even Dormammu to some extent. So that's why I said he's coming back. He's coming to this franchise. Pyron essentially devours planets like Galactus, but he doesn't do it in like the sense Galactus does. So that's why I thought, or I believe he destroys planets, something to do with planets, but yeah. That's why I said Pyron works so well for this franchise. It's like, yeah. Next up, we have John Talbane from the Darkstalkers franchise. This is the Kung Fu Werewolf. I'm kind of shocked he didn't appear in this, although Amatera's having that DLC skin, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I don't count because it's just an alternate skin. Yeah. I decided, I think we can have a little more goofy characters. A Kung Fu Werewolf is goofy, but it still works for this franchise as well. Next up, Dimitri. Now, Dimitri was actually considered for Ultimate Marvel's Capcom 3, but he was cut out due to one thing, is that he transforms, he has a power. It's like, of course, Marvel was never going to approve. Yeah. However, I decided there is a way you can fix that. With the female characters, it does that thing, but with the males, it doesn't. It's just so then they can add some new characters. Yeah, so that's why I decided to do that. Add Dimitri into this. He kind of also adds a more interesting character with the werewolves and vampires, but yeah. Next up, Juri Han. Juri's like one of Street Fighter's most popular characters ever since Street Fighter 4 and Marvel's Capcom 3. But yeah. I decided, yeah, she can be into this franchise again. But yeah. The Monster Hunter. Now, this one is always the hardest one for me to pick. And to be honest, I kind of agree. Because for those that don't know, Monster Hunter is one of Capcom's most popular games, alongside Street Fighter and Resident Evil. However, the problem with Monster Hunter is this. It's more customizable. You can never, it's so hard to understand it. So that's why I say, yeah, Monster Hunter can come back. Yeah. And also with its creature, God, I forgot the name, and I don't even know how you say it, so I'm just going to write the name here. It's on the pop. I don't know how you say it, but I said include because it's important to include monsters into this, but yeah. Finally, our last two characters, we have Grandmaster Mayo from Strider. If Strider's coming, I thought it's important that we have another character and not just him every game. So yeah, that's why I decided Mayo works perfect for the franchise. He was even in the gameplay, which makes me question why he wasn't playable in the game. Yes, a lot of things with Marvel's Capcom Infinite. MODOK was even in the game, but not even as a playable character. Wow. And finally, Astra from Astra's Wrath. No brainer. Not even going to debate this one. So yeah. Now, like I said, I should have. That's why I can understand for any Capcom fan, this roster is lackluster. To be honest, I kind of agree. I think this Capcom roster is definitely lackluster compared to what we got in Infinite. It's definitely a bit better, and it's definitely more like, yes, this is what I need. It's just that I think with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, most of the problems actually stem from Marvel's roster. Not really much with Capcom's. I think most people think Capcom's roster was just okay. It's not the best roster, but it's fine for what it is. It's just the many characters from 3, which alone is a great roster. But yeah. Now, as for the DLC characters, this is where things get interesting. So for starters, for the story mode, we have Cyber Akuma. This is why I brought back Akuma. Cyber Akuma is from X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and I believe Marvel vs. Superheroes. And I thought Cyber Akuma makes perfect sense to add for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, especially given that this is Marvel and Capcom fused together. In return, we have Silver Surfer and Wesker from Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate. This is essentially one of the few sub-bosses you fight before facing Galactus in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, so that's why I decided to bring Wesker back, but yeah. Other characters we're going to have, we have Amigo from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Sun, and Ruby Heart. These characters are coming back because of this fused world. That's why I decided this is why I decided to bring these characters back. And we also have Abyss from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. He's essentially the final boss. He would essentially be like a sub-boss in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And he would essentially be your first like boss before you fight Ultron Sigma in the arcade mode. So pretty much it would be like this. You from 1 through 5, you fight random opponents, like random generated computers. You'd say pick Spider-Man and Beautiful Joe, and you go like your first one's like Ryu and Wrecker. Second one could be Claire Redfield and Captain America, whatever. And until number 6, you fight Abyss. After that, you go into Ultron Sigma, but around halfway through, he becomes Ultron Omega. I found it very random that you just fight Ultron Sigma, then you fight Ultron Omega. Why not have, for half the fight, you fight Ultron Sigma, but then after you beat him one time, he becomes Ultron Omega. I just find that weird, and I just find that part of Infinite what we got was so weird. So that's why let's bring him back. Other characters, we have a character from Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. He was essentially based on a Japanese character. I forgot his name, or I don't have the time to research. But yeah. And finally, our next character is Mecha Zangief. Mecha Zangief is a Street Fighter version of Zangief, and a mechanized version that was based by Shadaloo and others, and yeah. Alright. Now our next character, this is actually a skin from Marvel vs. Capcom 3 that Dante had, and I believe it was meant to be a reminiscent or a version of the Frightful 4 costume, but yeah. So I decided this makes perfect, as it could be like Dante has some powers from the Frightful 4, which alone is Fantastic Four representation. Next up, we have Hagar. Actually, no, scrap that. We have Firebrand, but we have two Firebrands. One is essentially him being merged with Blackheart, and the other was with Green Goblin. This is because in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, he had two skin alternate colors that were basic representations from Marvel, and I said that can work for this franchise, for this game. Firebrand, one with Blackheart, the other with Green Goblin. It'll be essentially him getting merged with them. Next up, we have Hagar with a different skin. This is essentially Hagar if he became Kraven the Hunter, because Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had like a skin where had an alternate color where Hagar would essentially have like Kraven the Hunter as design. But yeah. Next up, we have X-Guardian. Why wasn't these people playable in Infinite, like part of the roster? It really is sad that this is how they came up, and we got the roster that we got. The X-Guardians could have made such an interesting concept. Next character, I believe he's from he's an original character from Marvel vs. Capcom. I believe one of the games, I forgot. I'll write his character down and see. But yeah. Next up is a symbiote BOW soldier. These guys, again, just like the X-Guardian, I think Capcom missed the potential, but then again, this is Infinite we're talking about, and look at Infinite's roster. I don't blame them. I really don't blame them that they just didn't came up with these ideas. But yeah. That's why I felt like these two characters, like X-Guardian and Symbiote BOW, could have been great characters. Next up, we have Shadow Lady and Shadow. Now, these two characters are not the same character. Shadow Lady is a version of Chun-Li. So it means, yeah, is a shadow version of Chun-Li who essentially has the psycho power in her, and it's controlled by M. Bison. And Shadow is a version of Charlie Nash from Street Fighter who does the same thing, or something similar. So I decided these two characters come out because they both came from Marvel vs. Capcom franchise. Yeah. And I already said the Green Goblin one. Now, as you can notice, I didn't mention any of the other, the top 3 corners of both the left and right side for Marvel and Capcom. That's because some of these characters are interesting. Yeah. So starting out, we have the pink faceless dude. This guy's name is Mega Man. No, I'm actually being serious. This guy's name is Mega Man. I'll even show you evidence. Reason why I decided to do it is kind of obvious. His name is Mega Man. Capcom is known for a character named Mega Man. Next up is Pyron. Yeah, we're going to have 2 Pyrons in this game. Morgan. Yeah. And Dante. Dante. Something like that. That's how it's said. It's like a robot, think of like MODOK, but yeah. And then for our last 3, we have Spider Queen, because there's a Marvel character called Spider Queen. Iron Maiden, Marvel character called Iron Maiden, and Iceman. If you didn't get any of that last one, I don't even know what to even tell you, but yeah. As you can see, I don't know where I would put them on the roster, but that's why I decided to do this random, the most random, but yeah. As you can clearly tell, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was a huge disappointment for a lot of people. I've never played the game. And I really don't plan to. The only good thing I will add is probably just the story, but even then, it still has some issues. The game is called Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Half the story is just Marvel and Capcom characters together, which I feel is a disappointment. It could have been Marvel. I feel like that game should have been called Marvel and Capcom Infinite. I believe that they should have just called it. They should have had it like similar with Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. They fight for a bit. Then around half point they team up because they realize it's pointless. They try to take down Ultron Sigma. Plus, it'd actually be nice to see the conversion and seeing the worlds actually merged. But yeah. Overall, yeah. I'm only even going to address some of the rivals that we're going to have. Because I believe another thing I think I hate about Infinite was the lackluster rivals. Like, we had Ghost Rider and Morgan. Okay, that's not a bad one. I actually kind of like that one. But then we have Iron Man versus Spencer. Ultimate had them as, semi-rivals, but they weren't, main rivals. So here in the rival, I'm not obviously going to do it for all of them, but yeah. So starting off, we have Sentry and Ryu. These 2 characters have been considered to be some of the most powerful characters in their respective universes by many characters. Both have dark sides that they must constantly overcome and face, and both also have very similar attacks because they're both more energy blast attacks. Next up, Man-Thing versus Claire Redfield. Claire usually goes up against giant monsters with super elemental stuff in them, and Man-Thing is no exception. Man-Thing's also been more of a loner in comparison. Not as say like the Hulk, but he is more of a loner, so that's why Claire and Man-Thing could kind of be like a replacement for Hulk and Chris and Shumagorov and Jill. Yes, Shumagorov and Jill are kind of rivals in Marvel vs. Capcom, but yeah. The Punisher and Dante both use weapons and both became who they are through the tragedy of through the loss of their families. And both also use guns as well. In addition, they both have the exact opposite style. Punisher is the more cold-blooded and more antisocial. Dante is the more upbeat, more happy-go-lucky guy. Yeah. Daredevil and John Talbane, both are kung fu experts. Both are very acrobatic. Both also fight to protect others, no matter what, even at the cost of their own lives. Yeah. So I'm not gonna obviously go into each one, but then yeah. Obviously, I'm not gonna go into each character, but you see because you can see it's fun and it's interesting. Yeah. I'm also gonna post the characters' rivals in the comments. That way, everybody can kind of get the perfect idea as to what I'm talking about. But yeah. So overall, thank you all so much for watching. How do you think about this Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite roster? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's just okay? Let me know down below, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm